Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Next Door NetAdmin. Today, we're going to talk about something that peeves me just a little bit, but it's probably something that if you're working with file shares, you've probably already experienced, or you may want to know how to do or how to deal with, even though it annoys me a little bit. So, let's talk about it. First off, what happens when you are browsing a network? If you go to a host and you just type in // in the host, you can see shares that are there. This happens to be on a PXE boot server, so we've got a couple shares here, TFTP and images. What's in them isn't the important part. The fact is, you can see that they exist. Now, just being able to see that they exist doesn't automatically mean you have access to it, but you can see that they're there. There is a school of thought in admin circles that says sometimes maybe you don't want these shares to actually show up. Maybe you'd rather have them be invisible. How do you make them turn invisible? Do you get any sort of a benefit from making them turn invisible? Let's give that some thought. But first, I'm going to show you how to make them turn invisible. If I were to open up my C drive here, I've got a temp folder already set up, and I've got a nice little test file in here. If you're curious, all it says is hi. But I'm going to share this temp folder to the network. If I do that, share this folder. If I have the share name as temp, okay. If I refresh my network view here, I can see there's a new temp folder shared out here. A temp share, I should say. And if I open it, I see the file. Okay, cool. So I've just created a standard visible file share. All right. Well, let's say I go in here, I unshare it just to, make sure that it's not there anymore. And in fact, I'll just go back and refresh my view to make clear the fact that it's gone. And actually, I'll also go here and go to that share again, and you can see nothing's opening up. I just want to make the point that we have removed the share so that it's not currently active, because there's no point in showing you that I made it invisible if the question is, well, was it there the whole time? It's not there. Okay. How do we make this turn invisible? Well, when you share it out, you put your share name in. If you add a $sign to the end of it and create the share like that, we can do the refresh. There's no share here. I can hit the refresh again and again. It's not there. But if I go to it manually, that's not supposed to happen. Ha ha. What just happened here? No, it's shared out. It's got the $sign. Okay, what's going on here? And why is this not working? Oh, I know why it's not working. Because I've been typing in /temp. /temp doesn't exist. I just changed the share name to one with the $sign. I should know this. So yes, I can't do it. But if I type it in correctly with the $sign on the end of it, I get it. Okay. So it's not visible on the network, but I can still access it if I know the actual share name, including the $sign on the end. So, cool. I've made an invisible share. What good is this? Well, a lot of documentation, a lot of school of thought has been maybe You don't want users to go poking around in a share like profile $, or home folders where it would be home $, where you have a bunch of folders there for individual users and you need them to have access to their own home folder or to their own profile, but you don't want them to be browsing that directory and seeing everybody else in there. Is this secure? No. It's not secure at all because, as you can see, we still have access to it. All we have to do is type in that address and we can go in. Further, in a profile directory where you have a whole bunch of different users in there, and the same for home folders if you have a whole bunch of users in there, people shouldn't have access to everybody else's stuff anyway, right? You should have permissions set up so that each user has access to their own folders and not to anybody else's. If they tried to go in and double click on somebody else's folder, they should get a big fat error message saying you don't have access to this folder, go away. Maybe minus the go away part. So does hiding the share actually give you anything? Users are still going to have to access that share in the first place in order to get to their own folders. If they have a network share mapped in, my computer, if we went through and we add a network location, map network drive, there we go. And if we, set this to localhost temp $, and we have that mapped as a Z drive, okay, you can see it's at localhost and it's temp $. You can see it right there. Let's say it was localhost / let's unmap this, disconnect. There we go. And then in our temp folder, we're going to add a user folder. We'll just say that this is user, and then they have their own files in here. Okay, cool, fine. So what you would do in Active Directory, you would set it up so that their home folder or whatever was at localhost home $. We're using temp at the moment /user. Okay, cool, fine. That opens up, that maps, and it's got their name on it. But you can still see the path. You can still see the server and the share where it is. And all I have to do, again, is go to that particular server and share, and I can view what's in there. I can see it because I have to be able to see it in order to be able to access my individual folder. So is it actually giving you any security? No, not at all. The only thing it's doing is preventing casual inspection. I go to /localhost. I don't see a temp $ share, but it's there. And anybody who's using it, i.e. all the users who have profiles or home directories, can still see that it's there just because they can see that it has to be there. That's how they're accessing it. So in my view, it doesn't really give you anything whatsoever. The other thing that I'll point out is this particular method of using a $ on the end of the share name to make it invisible. That's a Windows specific quirk. If you try doing this through Samba on a Linux environment, or perhaps in a TrueNAS or something of that sort, adding a $ doesn't automatically make it invisible. On the TrueNAS, you can see that there's a checkbox that says browsable to network clients. That's what that option controls. If it's browsable to network clients, you can see it on the network. If it's not browsable, it's invisible, and it doesn't matter whether it has a $ or not. So, if it's not particularly useful for any reason, why use it? Or why am I against it? Does it even matter? You can just make it invisible and it makes you feel better, but why get annoyed at it? Does it get in the way? I would argue that it does in some circumstances. What are those circumstances? Well, mostly this is when you're trying to move things from A to B, or if users are trying to do the right thing and figure out where something is located without having to bother an admin for it. In those cases, does it help if the share is invisible? No. It's just raising more questions. Again, they can see it exists, but then when they go looking for it, they can't see it. It's not creating any additional security because the security is done through permissions. All it's doing is creating more confusion. And I don't see how that can be a good thing. I want my users to be less confused, not more confused. And if I'm trying to, talk to somebody in management about moving all the files from one server to another, say during a migration, I don't want to have to explain, well, what do you mean, you've got this huge home $sign folder to move? I don't see any evidence of that. Are you just making things up? I'm not making things up. I would show you. If it was visible, you could go see it and verify it for yourself. So, in that sense, I think it actively hinders the running of a smooth network because, again, they have to be able to access it anyway. It's just not visible on casual inspection, which makes it more difficult for them to understand the structure of the network and what's actually being done. But there are instances where I would make a share invisible. And that is specifically if it's no user interaction whatsoever. Let's say, as an admin, I am doing some work to migrate virtual machines from one host to another. It's not in a failover cluster, so I basically have to do this by exporting a virtual machine from one server, putting it on a network, and then moving it to the next location where I'm going to be importing it. Let's just say that. In this case, I just need a waypoint in the middle. Do I need this to be visible to users? No, I really don't. If I had to move that, I don't have to schedule that with anybody. I don't have to, talk with them, with anybody about it at all. I can just turn it off, make it disappear. I can move it silently behind the scenes. If there's no user interaction in a share whatsoever, then I'm okay making it invisible. Because it's just one of those things happening behind the scenes. It can appear one day, I'll use it as long as I need it, I'll get rid of it. It doesn't concern anybody else. So I can, and sometimes have, made it invisible. But if it's something that I plan to have around for a long time, say it's an ISOs directory, I have created those specifically for storing a library of ISO files. Do my users need access to that? Probably not. Does it harm anything if they have access to that? Probably not. These are just publicly available ISO files I happen to be housing on the network because I'm using them on a regular basis. So, does it gain me anything to make them invisible? No, it really doesn't. And I can probably make it available to people so that if they're browsing a server, they're like, oh, hey, there's an ISOs directory. Is there anything in here that's of use to me? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Okay. It may not be mapped as an actual network drive, but it is still a permanent resource that is available, so I'll make it visible to them. The things that I'll make invisible are things like a migration folder, where I'm picking something up and moving it over there, or perhaps a deep archival folder. If I have a virtual machine that is being decommissioned and it's going to be wiped out, nobody cares about it, maybe what I'll do actually is export it and save it to a deep archival folder and hang on to it for another year, another 2 years, who knows, just to be extra careful so that it's there if I need to import it, if I need to access it, if I need to look at it for any reason, I'll hang on to it for a period of time. Things that are in deep archival like that are not supposed to be user-facing, and I don't need them going and messing around in it. That is something that is managed behind the scenes. So again, I would make that invisible. But I wouldn't use it for things like profile directories or home directories or anything else that is user-facing, because they can see it exists. Hiding it from them does nothing. Absolutely nothing. But there you go. That's how you can make a share that is visible or invisible in Windows. And I've told you how to do it on TrueNAS, even though I haven't demonstrated it. You can check out some of my previous videos about TrueNAS and how to set up a share, not set up a share. You should be able to see where that checkbox was. And certainly if you go back to Share Setup and take a look at it, it's there. And you can make it invisible or non-browsable as you wish. But for today, that's about it. So hopefully you found that enlightening, an interesting discussion on security via obscurity by making it invisible versus it's not secure. It's not any sort of security whatsoever. It just makes things more difficult. Regardless, hopefully you found the conversation to be enlightening or thought-provoking. If you have any comments on this, or if you have any thoughts on things that you'd like me to cover in future, feel free to let us know down in the comments section. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. I am your Next Door NetAdmin, and we will see you next time.